talk a bit about the neighbourhood work I've been doing and the co-design work. And the thing to say is that I don't know everything about co-design, but what I've been doing is learning, because there's always more to learn, but learning how to kind of do this in a national organisation that's trying to deliver for local communities, and about the practical reality of that. It's not shiny, it's not pretty. There you go, that's my talk. So, yes, it works. Technology works sometimes. So we spend a lot of time designing for users, for products, for journeys, for services. But what happens when what you're designing for is a neighbourhood? And this isn't an organisation, this is a neighbourhood, or integrated neighbourhood teams within those neighbourhoods. It's a very different behaviour that you're trying to design for, or trying to help. It's, well, if you think about neighbours, good neighbours become good friends, do they? I don't know. But you know, they argue, they have histories, they have power dynamics. If you think about Paul in Neighbours, that's quite a... Anyway, let's not go there, I'm showing my age. But in terms of integrated neighbourhood teams, they have quite random organisational boundaries. They cut across the boundaries of organisations that as they're set up now. And they have different contexts and have random geographies that don't match other things in the places that they're working. So none of this fits into some sort of little tidy persona that we're kind of used to working with normally. And so you have to really think about, well, how are you going to work with this? How are you going to design for this? And this is kind of what I've been trying to do for the past 18 months. And I've been working on this thing called neighbourhood health, looking at how we might support local through national. And it's been incredible because, for a number of reasons, not all positive, but it's been incredible because of the incredible people who are working locally to deliver neighbourhood care, but also the amount of learning that has come from this work, and we'll continue to learn as we're doing it because we're still going. In terms of background and neighbourhood, do you know what? Let's go back to basics. You'll have heard of, well, some of you may have heard of the 10-year plan. It does what it says in the tin. Well, actually, no. It's a vision for the NHS in the next 10 years. And it talks about 3 shifts, which are hospital to community, sickness to prevention, and IR to digital. And what this basically means is care close to people's homes, it being joined up, having services based around people, not institutions, helping people to stay healthy, to prevent poor health, and putting the power of health into people's hands. I may use the word patient quite a lot, but I come from the NHS and what we're talking about is people. Not everybody is a patient. And neighbourhood health is a core part of that 10-year plan, and this is all good because you've got this really clear intent of what we're trying to achieve. But when you actually get into neighbourhoods and into the places where they're delivering this care on the front line, that intent is meant with, you know, reality, and it's very different, and it's not clear, and it's not as easily laid out as 3 bullet points that you have here. So, what is neighbourhood health, I hear you shout? I'm not sure there is actually one definitive view of this. You have multiple people saying what their view is of neighbourhood health and multiple lenses on it. And I don't really think there's been an official one answer of what it is. Maybe I missed it, I don't know. But this is where we started in terms of there being sort of 6 fundamental themes to neighbourhood health. So it's about alleviating pressure on general practice, alleviating pressure on hospitals, and targeting people who are most risk of actually turning up in GP practices and in hospitals. So people with multiple conditions or various different things like frailty, lots of different conditions that it works with. And it's about shifting towards that proactive measures, so that we're not getting people at the point where the only thing they can do is walk into an A&E. We're helping them further up the sort of funnel. and helping people to be able to self-manage their conditions and also have a clear care plan of knowing when, if something happens, there'll be a trigger somewhere and they'll be able to get the help that they need. And using multidisciplinary teams, and you know, multidisciplinary teams aren't new in the NHS, and actually neighbourhood health actually isn't new, quite frankly, but more on that later. But this is not about multidisciplinary health teams, this is about holistic teams that are about your health. They're from social care, they're from local authorities, they could be from housing, they could be from volunteer community, acute mental health. And it's a very different lens, potentially, that folks that are working nationally in the NHS might not be looking as wide as that. And what does it mean for people? Well, I'm going to call this lady Miriam just because she reminds me of my grandma, and my grandma Miriam was absolutely wonderful and a lovely lady. But it's for people like Miriam. She's about 72 and she has multiple conditions, and she sees multiple different people to help her stay well or to get care. And actually, at the moment, potentially, her care is fragmented. There's referral processes that are quite manual, that could be duplicated, and actually people don't know who's referring to what where. There's no single professional or individual who actually has oversight of our entire care plan. They can't see what's happening in social care, they can't see what's happening in health. And you know, there's risk of things being missed and falling through the gap, which not necessarily getting the support you need. And the vision is for that care to be coordinated without duplication of effort, for her to be confident to manage her conditions, and also to avoid those unnecessary hospital visits, because if someone's got frailty, if it's mild, and they end up in hospital for a period of time, often people get more frail when they're in hospital, and then when they come out, that is not reversed. You don't go back to the way you were before. So actually avoiding people going into hospital when they're frail is actually a really important thing for the whole system and the individual. So we started in this space, because obviously there wasn't this one main definition. We started, you know, where I obviously advocate for us all to start. We conducted research and went out there into the places, understood what was going on. And really, neighbourhood health is an aspirational process for delivering holistic care. That's what it is, about keeping people well and away from episodic care. So we went out there to the places to understand how it was being delivered now, because there are places, including here in Greater Manchester, who've been delivering this for 8 years. And all of a sudden it's in the centre of this 10-year plan. And we went out there and we thought, people are working on very different things. Some people are working on frailty, some people are specifically focusing on cardiovascular disease or COPD, etc. And we thought we're going to have all these different models of how integrated neighbourhood health is working. And what became clearer and clearer, actually, there were some key components to it and some key sort of parts of neighbourhood health. There's a lot on this slide. It's not important what's on this slide. But, well, you know, it is actually quite important to neighbourhood health. But this is what we've observed that integrated neighbourhood teams have to achieve to be able to be successful in neighbourhood health. And what we found is some places are doing some of this really well. Some of these places are really struggling with doing this. And, you know, no one is doing this. No one's actually got it all cracked and all sorted. But as we went out there and spoke to people and reflected this back, this helped folks frame what it is we're trying to do, the model they were trying to deliver and what they were trying to achieve. Just to zoom into it a little bit more, in terms of the complexity, this is just about access and access to the service. So you've got journeys into the service, you've got triage and prioritisation, you've got how people are first contacted. People who are being, what's the better word? People who are being helped, treated, supported through the integrated neighbourhood teams or neighbourhood health don't actually know that's the pathway that they're on. They're just maybe feeling they've got a bit more coordinated care, I don't know, hopefully. But they don't know. So you can't go out and say, hi, is anybody there who's been, you know, part of this? Anyway. But if you just look at journeys into the service, people could be accessing that in one integrated neighbourhood team in multiple different ways. They could be referred in, they could refer themselves in, their carer could refer them in. It could be a patient flag on any one of a number of systems that that patient is in, or that person is in. It could be all different ways, and every integrated neighbourhood team has multiple ways that someone can come into it, and each neighbourhood team might do it differently. And in each ICS, of which there are 43, there are multiple integrated neighbourhood teams. So there's lots of people doing lots of things in lots of different ways. And don't even get me started on triage, because just in the NHS, triage is done multiple ways. And then you add in social care, voluntary, all the other organisations involved, and how do they triage people, and how do you get to a joint view of who's the people who most need the most help? And then, actually, how do you contact them? Well, there's multiple different ways. Trusted relationships, I think, are the best one, but that's me, I'm really into trusted relationships. The other thing to know is, and be really clear about, as I said, this isn't just health, and it isn't just the NHS, and so the complexity in this is huge. One of the key findings from all this work was that we were there to sort of say, well, let's see how national can help local. Local haven't got a clue what national have. Local haven't got a clue whether it will help them, how to access it, who to talk to, through no fault of their own. And so you're coming in as a national organisation, we're going to come and help you. And there's also an expectation from local that national would just say, well, here's tech that you need to deliver it. Go and use this tech, this is all you need. Not that necessarily that was welcomed or they wanted that. But if you think about historical relationships of commissioning, and how it's worked previously, that kind of was how the relationship was in relation to when we're going to talk to them. And national didn't really get the nuance of local, and actually the fragmented estate within the local area, never mind just the fragmented estate that you have in the NHS, but what they're using locally. And actually a lot of it was working for them, even though it was fragmented. And whilst the key person in all of this is always the patient, in this, you see people, and it's a bit like some of the talks this morning, you see people delivering care for individuals despite what they've got, despite the tools that they've got to do that with, despite how it works. And so our key focus was on the health professionals, the care professionals, everyone, the voluntary people who were trying to deliver this care to individuals. And we worked with each neighbourhood place, group of neighbourhood places, to prioritise the key aspects of this that we wanted to focus on first, because we cannot solve it all. And I mean, talking about tooling and stuff like that, there was a perception actually all we need to do was just give people a tool. We just need another tool, don't we? We can bring our digital tools to local places and we'll be able to solve it. And like one of the places we worked with, the things that they really wanted to focus on was how do we identify the people to support, how do we coordinate their care, and how do we share that information across. And you look at that on the surface and go, you know what, we've got loads of national products, we've got loads of really good things that we can put out there and give to them. But this picture here, there's a picture on my slide here, and as far as the eye can see, there are post-it notes. And that line, as far as your eye can see, every single one of those post-it notes is a digital tool that someone in the integrated neighbourhood team has to interact with every day. Oh God. So you can't actually see the end of it. I'm not sure if it actually goes around the corner there. I'm not sure. That is just that. So, and then here we also sort of tried to sort of put in where just one particular person that works in this team. So it's like, say, a GP, and so there's multiple orange post-its here, and every single one of those orange post-its is a task that a GP has to do. I'll move out of the way because people are liking this picture. And so the last thing anyone blooming needs is another tool. And as you map the service, what you realise is the reason why this service works and the reason why integrated neighbourhood works, and I think you know what it is. It's not systems, it's not tools, it's not processes, it is people. And particularly in this case, it's the people that know the individuals they are supporting and the communities that they work within. The information on individuals wasn't flowing through like lots of digital systems. It really wasn't flowing through these tools at all whatsoever. It was flowing through people. And care was being coordinated not because of these tools as far as the eye can see. It was being coordinated because people trusted each other. The people who they were supporting trusted the people who were supporting them. And those people picked up the phone and filled the gaps. Talking about some of the talks this morning. They picked up the phone and they talked to people who could help and talk to the individuals. And here we are saying, well, let's see how National Digital can help this. And to some extent, I wonder whether, if this is about trusted relationships, do we even want digital to fill those gaps? I don't know the answer to that question, maybe. Again, in terms of focus, how we were looking at this from a national side of things, we were very much focusing on NHS. We were focusing on how do we link up things with the NHS, which is actually difficult enough as it is. But actually the ways of working on the front line in the ground isn't just NHS, it's wider than that. So we're not considering how do our national projects link into other sectors, into other organisations. And the thing is, as I said, neighbourhood health is not new. People have just started working in this way anyway, before any policy changes and before any guidance. And we were interacting with the NHS part of that and helping them with digital products and services, allegedly. We were trying to help those parts, but we weren't actually looking at it as a whole team of people that we need to be supporting. So, prizes for people who spot my holiday pictures in this presentation, by the way. There was learning gaps on both sides, and learning goes both ways. And it wasn't for local places to understand what national products could do to help them, or what they were, or who to speak to. But to be honest, we needed to be honest with ourselves, and we had a learning gap. We needed to understand local places. We needed to bridge the gap between national and local. And that's where co-design came in. So one of the learnings is that, not learnings, one of the truths actually in all of it is co-design's behavioural commitment is not a method. As a national organisation, as people that work in national organisation, we hold a lot of power. We own the roadmaps of our products. We own national digital resources. I'm saying the word own here, and that's where the power comes from. We're allegedly closer to policy. I'd like to be closer. But, historically, we've been the people that are giving out those contracts to local places to deliver care. We've been the commissioners. And because of this power relationship, that's where local places weren't just expecting the national digital to impose tech and fearful that what they'd already built, the assets they already had, was going to be wiped out. Because neighbourhood health is a real ground-up work. It is about what have you got there, what we got that can support people. And we're coming from the angle of, or assumption, that the products that we had were going to be useful. We were going to design them for local. We weren't talking about with. And we needed to reframe the designing from designing for to designing with. And a core part of this in neighbourhood, and one of the things repeated a lot as part of the implementation programme, is that neighbourhood's not about what's the matter with you, but what matters to you. And I took that through into the work we were doing nationally, and held firm onto that, and used that as the language, whether we work with local places or whatever, that's what's key. And there was quite a lot of pressure in that to some extent, because given that neighbourhood's a core part of the 10-year plan, every single product team has hooked their roadmap, their funding, their business case onto it, haven't they? And they really wanted to be part of it, they wanted to be in there, wanted to be working, they wanted to be getting out there, getting their products out there and doing it. But they didn't actually have that understanding of the local place. And one of the other things that came from that, that's not me, I wish I did look like that. Amazing hair. The concept of co-design isn't new, isn't something that people haven't heard of, but I think, I don't think people understand it, people don't know everything about it, but people find it really uncomfortable. Because someone working in the product team or as a product manager, and I'm not trying to just have a go at product managers or anything like that. But it's, when I say product, I mean the team that's delivering the product. You really care about what you're doing, the work you're doing. You're really passionate about it. You have a vision for it. You have a belief in it. And relinquishing that and the power that holds, or even just recognising it, can be quite difficult. And I had to sort of hold our very brilliant and enthusiastic product teams back, and because they were chomping at the bit. And what they didn't understand is when I said we are going to do this with, not to, I meant them as well. And that wasn't in the sort of the psyche and the thoughts and the sort of behaviour that, doing with is just what we do to the front line. It didn't mean doing with me as someone who works in a national team or anything like that. And it's interesting because places weren't actually used to us going, we're going to do this with you, we really mean with you. And so I had to build took a lot of time to build lots of good relationships with the local places, but also with our product managers, and just calm them down and go, look, I will bring you in, you won't be excluded, this is actually about doing with, not doing to. Just hold back till we know how we're going to do this and how we're going to do it well. And so we were basically setting it up so that we could equalise the power between national and local, between our digital folk and our people delivering the local services. And that's where co-design was helping us to do that. Now, interesting, it's quite interesting in Himal's talk, because this is relevant, and again, prizes for which gig this is. Just got a tour of my life here. There was another practical reality. I had no team. This was one of these projects, which probably was what Himal was referring to. This was one of those projects where someone had gone, there's this new thing, we don't have budget, we don't have any headcount, we don't have a team, we don't have anything. Could you just go help? And I seem to get pulled into that quite a lot, so the talk did resonate with me quite a lot. And it was literally, at this point, me, a service designer and a user researcher who was about to go on maternity leave. And if you want to do this well, you need people. But I thought, well, instead of trying to scale the team through all these things that I can't do, I'm going to scale participation. And given the pressure I had on, oh gosh, I didn't mean that. Given the pressure that I had from all the product teams, I thought, well, let's go to them. They want to get involved. They want to be part of it. They want to learn. So I brought them in, not to save local integrated neighbourhood teams, not as owners of it, but as learners in this whole process and as people who are in that co-design. And effectively, I crowdsourced the capacity that I didn't have. And this had three really useful things, three very important things. Firstly, local neighbourhood teams got access to national product people, and they built relationships with them, and they got to build those relationships not from behind a slide deck or behind a show and tell. They got to know them. Second, national teams got that direct contact with local places, and got to understand quite you know, in front of their faces, that real world complexity that they were trying to push their product into, and whether it was actually going to, you know, land in any sort of useful way. It also got the pressure off my back from the product people who wanted to get involved, which was very, very worthwhile. But thirdly, and probably most importantly, this actually became developmental opportunities for the people that worked in the organisation. And anyone who knows that you know, in NHS England, we're going through a lot of change, a lot of restructure, and that's challenging for staff. And people that were involved in the co-design, they were motivated, they were excited by it, they were out there with people doing things that mattered, and they were learning about how do we do this, because we were all learning about it. I'm learning about it. Everybody's learning about how we do this. But most of all, in times like this, it brought people back to what matters most. So, what did we learn about how to co-design nationally for local? Well, by the end of this work, in fact, we're not at the end of the work, we're still in the middle of it. We haven't necessarily co-designed a single project, but what we have done is co-design a shared way of working, a shared understanding, and trust to keep this going. And it's something that isn't just useful for the neighbourhood work, it could be useful for other work that I'm involved in terms of community care or mental health. Other learnings, well, quite frankly, timelines go out the window, but don't they always? Again, prizes for knowing where on earth that's from. There's also lots of people doing the same work in the same space, coming up with joint problems. And we don't want to just fix the problems in one context. We want to, you know, actually have a way of bringing that together so we fix it once. And so that delays what you want to do if you want to do it right, if you want to do it in the best way. Getting the right people in the room at the right time takes time. Keeping places engaged, neighbourhood teams engaged, keeping product folk engaged, that communication loop. The sort of synthesis of what we're learning, that took way longer than I think we anticipated. And I've been in this industry for a long time, so I really should know better. But all this takes time. The timelines go out the window. But what this has done is kind of given us a template for how we can work across other initiatives. We're learning as we go, but it's led to the acknowledgement of the cross-cutting problems that go across multiple different spaces that we're working within. It's got what's really useful. I'm not looking at faces in this audience that I've worked with before in my organisation, but it's actually got people cutting across their product silos to solve joint outcomes and try and get to those things. It started, you know, pulling together and getting people to look at the gaps across capabilities rather than just it's pulled folks out of product silos and out of just like a pure product mindset. I'm not going to say the word service. But the gaps between the capabilities, let's say that. And also whether we are the right people to fill those gaps. And it started a conversation about what level we should be delivering at this. What should local be doing and what should we be doing nationally? But I think this is something that's come up in the previous talks, and this isn't a new statement about recognising the power and privilege that we hold. And in this, co-design did become less about workshops and artefacts. It became about how you behave when you have more power than the people you're working with. But also it was a new, for me, it feels like another lens that maybe people just need to acknowledge, in that as a person working in a product team, you have power and privilege because you are working on that product in that product team. And you need to recognise that, and recognise that, you know, the people you're working with are the experts in their care, and we need to equalise that power between national and local, and between us delivering the digital stuff and the folks that are actually delivering the care on the ground. And we need to push back on requirements and specs and doing to, and do more of doing with. And in neighbourhood work, relationships aren't just a nice to have, and neither is the work we're trying to do now. They're the absolute infrastructure of what we do. And they're the thing, they're the system that make everything else possible. And finally, before better services come better relationships. You know, the question of can we co-design in the real world? Well, I think we can. But it asks a lot more of us than doing a workshop, going to talk to people, having some post-it notes in our pocket, and having really, really good intentions to do the right thing. It asks us nationally to actually go and work in and work with local reality, not observe it from a safe distance, confront uncomfortable truths about who we are, how we work, how we behave when we do this. And it asks us to treat that learning as bi-directional, and that we need to learn as well as everyone needs to learn about this. And it's about making sure we're designing for the places, not for polish. And most of all, to accept that sometimes the most important things we build is a relationship that makes better work possible later. So, thank you very much. I have no idea how long that was, but yes.
Great talk, thank you, and agree with everything you said. One of the questions I've got is from working with local authorities in Scotland and trying to co-design with them, was that they didn't have the capacity to co-design with us. How did you overcome that, or how are you overcoming that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different answers, a couple of different ways in that happen. Is that there is one, we were lucky to be working with, there's a national implementation programme for neighbourhood health, and they've actually been given space to do that. But even before we got to that, people really want to do this, and we brought the sort of the service design expertise. We worked with them to be in spaces that they were in already. We went to them, we worked with them. I think the fact that they were getting something out of it, so we helped them to articulate their model. And actually by helping them to articulate their model, that's helped them use that for getting access to further funding. So it's about what's actually in it for them. Because, and this, I've used this term before, and it came from somebody, and I can't remember who, but actually I think it was one of the community groups I worked with. You know, the concept of being a research vampire. When you go in, you get what you need, and then you go out again. And it's the same with co-design, service design, whatever we're doing, we can't go in and be the vampires that suck all the resource out. We need to actually be doing something that is useful for them. And so far what we're doing is useful for them. It's helped them to articulate what we're doing. It's given them access to, you know, national expertise that's been helpful to them. They don't have service designers, they don't have user researchers, they don't have the depth of digital expertise in a lot of places, and they're getting that access to it. So it's a reciprocal relationship, or actually we've more put the power in their hands in terms of what we do, and we've been very much led by them about what the outcome is from what we get out of it.
Amazing.
Thank you, that was great, and also big Neighbours fan, so.
Showed my age there.
I was really shocked by that post-it note picture of all of the systems and products. Is there sort of any scope to discuss fewer products coming out of something like this, as opposed to more?
I mean, ideally, I think that that's one hell of a question, isn't it, really? So it's to do with that fragmented estate, and the fact that really what you want to do with NHS tech is stick it on a bonfire and start again. That is what you want to do, but you can't, because there's patients, and there's data, and there's stuff, and it all has to carry on 24/7. So ideally, yeah, you want to throw it on a bonfire and start again. And there's people out there who say, well, what we've got this thing that can sit on top of it and pull it through, but then you're adding another system to the 30 as well. So is there scope? How much money have you got and how much time have you got? But I think probably one of my missions is to chip away at it. I think that's what we've got to do. I thought you can't get rid of it all, but we could chip away at it and sort of, you know, not all those systems are things that my organisation deliver or even contract or whatever like that. The places and the NHS are 30,000 different organisations, and they're autonomous organisations that can bring in whatever they want. They can buy in this tool, that tool. So all those things that were on there could be completely different in another integrated neighbourhood team, because people have, they're 30,000 different organisations. I think my answer is I don't know the answer, but I'd like to. I'd like to, but I think all we can do is chip away at it, and you know, that keeps me in a job for a while. I don't know who others.
Time for one more question, I think.
I'll let you choose who.
Don't let me choose.
Go on then, lady.
Yeah, down front.
I've actually got 2 questions.
I like it.
Sneak it in.
The first one is, how did your work with this co-design involve or not policy, / how did it influence policy? And the second one is, having worked on some co-design projects previously in my career, one thing's capacity, but another thing was mindset. So you obviously got the people who are super like, oh my god, this is great, this is a breath of fresh air, let's go for it. And then you also meet people who are like, I'm not there yet, really sceptical. How did you work on sort of changing that mindset within the co-design work you did?
I can probably answer both those questions in one.
Hey.
Took quite a bit of work and weaving it through to find out who was doing what, but the National Neighbourhood Implementation Programme sits in policy and strategy, and they're working with 43 accelerator sites that we've been doing the co-design with. And because of that, then they are on board and helping us to get into those spaces and work with these places to enable this stuff to happen. Has it influenced policy? Not yet, actually. Not yet. But actually, I'm meeting with someone next week, and we'll write stuff together, which would influence that, because that takes time. And in terms of were people on board, I think when you come from the integrated neighbourhood teams, the ethos again is, you know, what's the matter with you, but what matters to you. Working with, not doing to. And so this, and I don't want to call it methodology, but I'll call it methodology, co-design really speaks to that. And actually they're doing a lot of that anyway. It's what they do, it's the way they work, it's the ways of working. So in terms of the places, absolutely no resistance whatsoever. The question was, how is this different to all this other stuff we've done, and what's actually going to come out of it, and are you actually going to do anything? And that's the relationship building. But it was a space which was right for working in this way, because that's how they deliver their actual service. And that's why it's been just so incredible to work on.
Thank you.
I think that's it. Thank you so much.